of course, Orange TV. They have videotaped every one of our symposiums, every presentation, all the discussions. They've integrated in with the PowerPoints from the symposiums, and every one of those symposiums and content is on the UCF Venture Lab website. And Leslie with Zacco Associates, she's here this morning, and she's taken a word-for-word transcription of the whole symposium. So in addition to full video of all the presentations, we'll have a full word-for-word document of the entire symposium, as we have with the first 3 symposiums. So much thanks is due to Orange TV. And of course, the University of Central Florida and its downtown center, where we've been having these symposiums, an ideal place and setting for this event. I want to make 2 announcements of events coming up. One is on March the 2nd, where Ford will introduce its first plug-in vehicle in Florida, only the 2nd in the United States. So there's the website there. I'll give you a minute to write that down where you can go in and find some more information about it. But from what I understand from the press releases, you'll be able to go out and actually test drive the plug-in vehicle if you have a mind to. Looks like an exciting day. And then coming up on April the 14th is the annual Senior Design Symposium for Renewable and Sustainable Energy. That's where undergraduate students at UCF showcase their research, innovation, and creativity in the area of clean energy. I want to, before we move on to the speakers and the content of the day, I want to mention 2 handouts that you have in front of you. I think that you picked up at the front door. One is a status report on energy bills. I asked the legislative people within Orange County if they could do a quick status report for me yesterday on what bills were being prepared, ready to be introduced, and something about them. This is a summary of those bills. I was surprised to read through here and see that there are some things that if we want an RPS, we need to support, but there are a few bills that if you want an RPS, you better not support them. So a few of those stood out as well. The other thing that was handed out when you came in is a feedback form from today. The results of the feedback form that we had when we released the Cleantech study is also out there, and I think you'll find that interesting. There's a lot of detail to it. We only ask one question, rank the 17 recommendations in order of priority, pick 5, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which ones do you think are most important for consideration at a Cleantech Symposium. But somehow out of that one question, I got 7 or 8 pages of graphs and charts. But the RPS came clearly out as the top idea, the top topic that every one of our symposiums wanted to talk about today. But there's one question on here about today's symposium. We'd like to know from each of you what you think the 3 most important actions are that symposium participants can take to achieve the goal of an RPS in Florida. It's not going to be just Orange County or UCF or the Florida Energy Center who's going to make this happen. It's got to be everyone in this room doing something. And then looking forward to our next Cleantech Symposium in April. We don't have a specific date yet. It's going to be on green building codes and ordinances. And here's just a couple of questions to kind of just get us thinking about this. So I'd like you to respond to that as you're thinking through the material this morning. And finally, of course, at the bottom, if your company or organization would like to help sponsor the symposiums, we would deeply appreciate it. So you might think about that, and we can add you to the roster of sponsors at the next symposium. As we move ahead today, as I was watching the Olympics last night, and Sean White is his name, fantastic, I tried to think of a couple watchwords that maybe we can think about as we hear all the presentations today. If we really want to establish an RPS in Florida, it seems to me that we ought to be asking ourselves, what's reasonable? Is it 20% by 2020, 15%? What's included in an RPS? How do we make it specific to Florida? And how do you answer the question of cost? So there's a couple things that might give you some guidance, and just trying to think about these as the presentations are made. Our goal, of course, is to enact an RPS in Florida. There's and sort of to set the global stage for this symposium. I just want to end my introductory remarks with a quote from an article that is coming out in next month's issue of SFO magazine. That stands for Stocks, Futures, and Options magazine. It's just sfo.mag on the internet. And there's an article coming out in next month's issue titled Cleantech, How China Sizzles and the U.S. Diddles. There's just a couple of sentences from it. As the United States continues to be polarized around clean tech policy, diddling with implementation of things like a federal renewable energy standard, the Chinese have quietly leapt to the leadership position in the industry. In 2006, they passed an RPS calling for renewable to comprise 15% of their energy mix by 2020. They're going to reach that capacity of 20% by 2020. And they'll meet their 2020 solar goal by next year. So they're moving forward. This article describes how China wants to be dominant in the clean tech industry. They want to have a laser-like focus on clean tech. Watch for this article because I think it does sort of provide the framework within which we got to get going. And so one of the basic underlying questions that we need to ask ourselves today is how do we sizzle in Metro Orlando and not diddle? So with that, I'll just welcome. This is the record attendance today. I think we're going to end up having about 85 or 90 people. That's the number of people who registered. And we're going to continue these symposiums, and hopefully we hit some home runs. Someone emailed me a day or two ago and asked me, well, how are you going to measure success from the symposium today? And the way I would measure it if Florida passes an RPS. So I don't want to have egg on my face going through all this. So I don't think anyone else does either. We don't want to diddle in terms of doing what we need to do to be competitive, not just with China, but other states. Over half the states in the United States have passed renewable energy goals. When we meet with companies who want to build a PV manufacturing facility here, these days, in the same breath they ask about incentives, they ask, well, what kind of clean energy policies do you have in Florida that support the growth of clean tech? Do you have an RPS? Well, we're working on that, but meanwhile we're doing this, and we point to all the great resources that support clean tech in Metro Orlando. But it would sure help in our drawing companies to Metro Orlando and to Florida if we had an RPS of some type. Over, I think, 30 states, 35 states have mandatory RPSs. Some have voluntary. But I think the bottom line is that they all compromised and they all came up with something. In Dallas, there is something like I-4 called Central Expressway, and over the decades, there was talk about renovating it and putting it underground, widening it, elevating it. When we surveyed citizens and did focus groups, the bottom line there was, we don't care what you do with it, just fix it. So I think the message to the legislature and everyone working on the RPS goal is, let's do something. Doing nothing leaves us out of the race. Kirstie, thanks a lot.